Madman, Ramble. Alright, the question this time is from the man who is on a total roll. William of Orange did nothing wrong. Well, here we go. The question for you, my guy. Why is it that fans of Warhammer hate the end times so much? I hear the writing was lazy and characters that were important were simply shoved aside and forgotten or killed off in extremely stupid ways, and that it was a disappointing end for something that didn't need to end to begin with. Not sure what opinion to have on this, because I'm new to Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k. What's your take on the storyline for the end times? Cheers. Alright. So first of all, I myself, I don't really know the details, the whole entire details of the end times. I'm experiencing the story with you, so to speak. I do know some things, and from what I've gathered, it's not really that most people hate the end times themselves, but what they actually really hate is what they did afterwards. As in, they created the despicable Age of Sigmar, you know, and so from what I've understood, it's that most people just saw the end times as a ploy from Games Workshop to... Because the end times were created during a time where Warhammer, the Warhammer series, the Warhammer license, compared to the Warhammer 40k license, was failing. Not really spectacularly, but it wasn't doing as well as 40k. So, and you can actually notice this with Age of Sigmar. When you look at the design of the units and the models, they do resemble the Space Marines quite a bit, and the thing that always made Warhammer Fantasy special is that it's set in a Renaissance, Middle Ages type fantasy universe. And, I mean, essentially what, makes it different from the 40k universe. Whereas the 40k universe is a twisted take on humanity's future. And when I mean future, it's thousands and thousands of years in the future. So, to put... And especially, the Warhammer 40 fantasy universe... There are many things that are based off of our real history. The armor, well, I would guess sometimes it's completely over the top, but not as over the top as it is in 40k. You can still kind of see the practical use, and you can suspend your disbelief when it comes to the armor, the technology, because it is kind of based on some reality. Whereas, the 40k universe, it's complete, almost complete fantasy. Alright? But the Age of Sigmar went into the direction of 40k, where it made almost everything look like and feel like a complete sci-fi fantasy universe, but not a new fantasy universe, but just copying the 40k universe. Just copying the 40k universe and just calling it something else, pretty much. And so the problem is not really with... So I what I've noticed is that most people don't really have a problem with the end time specifically. I guess some do have a problem with the storyline and how things turned out. I mean, there's one huge problem with the end times, lore-wise, that doesn't make a whole not a lot of sense. I mean, it's not like the end times were the first major catastrophe, major event in the Warhammer universe. All right, but there is, I mean, the other one was the Great Catastrophe that I already talked about in my last Madman ramble. But there's one key difference, and one has to know: chaos. In order for chaos to exist, they need to have. That's what I also already tackled. Is chaos needs people to feed off of. But the end times, what happened during the end times was just complete eradication, which doesn't make any sense. Why would I mean, it would make sense if they would just if they were to try to subjugate the whole world. That would make sense. But to straight up go over there and just massacre everything in their path, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And so, well, because during the Great Catastrophe, for example, it made sense that chaos was trying to eradicate the old ones, because they had an alternative. They had the humans, the elves, and all the other races. They didn't need the old ones. The old ones were just standing in their way, so to speak. And so it made sense that they were trying to get rid of them, because after they got rid of them, well, the rest of the world was pretty much easy for the taking. It was much easier to corrupt whole populations and to start invasions and to subjugate more people, because, again, the old ones weren't standing in their way anymore. So, yeah, so an event like the end times actually makes a ton of sense in the Warhammer lore, in the Warhammer universe. But what doesn't make any sense is that chaos specifically would try to completely eradicate all their livestock. I mean, for them, almost every race is pretty much just for them livestock. So for them to just try and kill off their livestock is just ridiculous. How are they going to survive? Well, so they don't really care about survival. I mean, it's just weird. It's just weird. Although I would say the Skaven invasion could make sense. Well, it actually does make sense, and it's long overdue, I'd say. But it's just, again, the end times, and one also has to note that most people don't like hopeless stories. I mean, in the end, we would always love to see, our favorite characters not end up dead, or our favorite worlds that we've invested a ton of time in to just crumble into dust, crumble into despair and destruction and chaos with no hope, with absolutely no hope of a benevolent future, a good future. So that's also one of the reasons I think that because the end times, they just end in complete chaos, despair. I mean, there's no hope. There's just nothing left, pretty much. And it's just I think it's just the timing. The end times, an event like the end times was actually pretty logical that something like this would happen. I mean, there were many clues that some kind of massive crazy event was about to happen. But again, it's just the timing when you look at the marketing side of and just when you go out of the lore and out of the world and you go into real welcome to real life, it's just there are many clues that Games Workshop didn't need to write the end times as they did, and most people, I think, felt betrayed. Because, I mean, one could arguably say that they wrote the end times just to get rid of Warhammer Fantasy in order to, I don't know, just copy Warhammer 40k and just give it a new name to make some quick money. And one of the clues would be that they didn't really, in the last couple of years, I mean, before leading up to the end times, they didn't really put a lot of work into the new editions. There were many army rosters that some were, I think, decades old, if I'm not mistaken. So there was just a huge lack of commitment to the license. And so it just looked like, for some people, it just looked like they tried to burn it all down and get as much money as they still could instead of really putting in the work. Because, in my opinion, Warhammer Fantasy has huge potential. I mean, if you listen to the lore videos, my lore videos, I mean, it's just a massive world. I mean, you can really sense and you really get the feeling that, I mean, the people that created this universe, they really put in the work. And it's just chock full of detail. And so to just write the end times, just to say, okay, the whole world just ended, blah, 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 that's it, done. I mean, I can definitely understand that some people, or most people, would be upset and really, really pissed off. I mean, there's one example of a universe that's very, very similar, if not to say pretty much exactly the same, and that's I mean, yeah, I don't think it's controversial. I mean, it's just my opinion of it. The Star Wars universe. It's the same exact thing. I mean, the Star Wars universe, especially when it came to Legends, it was just a massive universe. And hundreds of authors just put in a ton of work to really, really flesh out the universe and there's just pages upon the wiki itself, just pages upon pages upon pages of lore. And for Disney to come in and just throw it out the window, and what did we get instead? Well, I mean, even if you say the films were good, okay, which is a valid opinion, of course, the objective fact is just that the universe itself is just nothing when it comes to the detail, the sheer scale and sheer mass. It's just nothing compared to Legends, the old Star Wars before Disney. And so with the Age of Sigmar and Warhammer Fantasy, it's the exact same thing. I think people just really got upset once they realized that Games Workshop, the thing they came up with, was Age of Sigmar, which is the same thing as the new trilogy when it comes to Star Wars and the old one with Legends, where it's just, the universe is just so much more, it's so tiny. All the lore, all this work, and all the investment people put into the Warhammer Fantasy universe, it's just bam, bam, gone, nothing left. Like it did not matter. And I can definitely relate, and I can definitely understand. Because, there were people, spending thousands, what should I call it, dollars, euros? Well, for me it would be euros. Thousands of euros into their hobby. And for it to just get thrown out the window. Well, first of all, it got completely neglected. Games Workshop, from what I've gathered, just focused entirely on 40k. And they just left Warhammer Fantasy lying around, so to speak. And so that's when people already got frustrated. Fans already got frustrated. But then when they when they created the end times, yeah, it made sense. It made sense because people were very suspicious at that point. 'Cause why would they do this? Well, once they released Age of Sigmar, it all made sense. It all made sense. And who could blame? I mean, who could blame them? I mean, I myself, because I only, I'd say I got into fantasy, maybe, I really got into it, maybe, I'd say a year ago. I wasn't as invested. So I got into it when the end times were already written. Age of Sigmar was already out. So I wasn't. I didn't go on this journey. But I know from experience with Star Wars. Star Wars was one of the universes I was on the journey, and so I 100% understand why people were upset. I mean, because again, they did the same thing with Star Wars, and it's just. I guess what I'm trying to say is no shit that people get upset when corporate greed is the driving force behind a storyline, and not the actual story making sense or developing naturally. That's what I'm trying to say. The end time, sure, a cataclysmic event comparable to the end times, sure, makes 100% sense. But the end times themselves, very suspicious, very very suspicious. And I wouldn't even say that it's suspicious because now we know it's fact. They just wanted to find a way to quickly get rid of the Warhammer Fantasy universe, and well, they did it. As far as I know, the Age of Sigmar is failing, and that's when the whole Total Warhammer thing was starting. And I think Games Workshop is realizing the potential of the Warhammer Fantasy license, and they're trying to restart Warhammer Fantasy. And because fans got this pissed off, yeah, but who could fault them? I think that the fans are definitely in the right here when they got mad at the end times. It was a dirty ploy. It wasn't really necessary. Games Workshop could have put in the work, and the end times were, I think, just an easy way out for them. Maybe it got them the cash. I mean, probably got them the cash, but if you really want to, as a company, if you really want to have an audience long term, you can't always think short term. Short term gain, but with this ploy, they lost a ton of fans. And I mean, fans that would buy, really pour their hearts into this hobby, into this license, into this world. They just lost them completely, and these were fans when it comes to the financial aspect that were pouring in thousands and thousands of euros. So they lost them, and I think that's what they realized. So that's why they restarted the whole Warhammer Fantasy. But yeah, when it comes to the second part of the storyline itself, actually, to be honest, I don't know the whole storyline. I know some things, but I myself find the idea of the Skaven uniting and starting a whole invasion, I find that really, really interesting. And I think, maybe personally, I think that maybe they should have just, if they put in more work and if they were really focusing on the Warhammer Fantasy license, I think they should have maybe just did the Skaven invasion separately from the Chaos invasion. Could have been really, 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 really interesting to have this head-on collision with this swarm of rat people. Could have been really, really interesting. But as it stands now, I guess I'm not sure. I mean, from what I've noticed, there's definitely a ton of material on the end times, so it's not like they put in no work at all. But I think that most people just felt like it was kind of like damage control. They needed to put in the work when it comes to the end times, but even then, to just kind of hide the fact that they were just trying to get rid of Warhammer Fantasy as quickly as possible. So, I don't know, I would say it's kind of the same as with the Star Wars trilogy, where they did put out comics, they did put out books explaining the universe more, but these comics and this bonus material it just feels like damage control. They know they effed up, and and now they're just trying to mitigate the damage. That's just what it is, so that people don't freak out completely. It's the let's just call it the bare minimum of what they had to do, because yeah, most people just felt like, it's a big F you in the face from Games Workshop for all their devotion, dedication to the craft, to the hobby, and for that to just get thrown out the window, I mean, damn. But me personally, I do find the concept of the end times interesting, and at first glance, I also find it interesting that yeah, for once, well, not for once, but I do find it interesting when the bad guys essentially win, so long as it makes sense, of course, in the universe and in lore. Yeah, but I guess I'm gonna find out once I get to the end times and I'm doing a video on them. But as it stands now, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. Um, there's one thing I just know, Sigvald, for example, his death is just, oh my damn, okay. He was one of my favorite characters, but and I think he had much potential, a lot of potential, but they just, yeah, Throg just pees on him. Just, god damn it. Did this really have to be? I mean, it's kind of an interesting death, I suppose, but really, was that really necessary? But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited to find out, to really find out, to really get into the end times, and to see what all the fuss is about. But that's just what I've gathered, what I've was able to look up and to find out. Um, it's just the problem is with Warhammer Fantasy, because Warhammer Fantasy is not like um, Warhammer Fantasy is, it's kind of like a video game series. It's the same thing. It's a hobby where people invest a ton of money into. If it was just the movies, for example, and no extra materials like comic books, games, and so on and so forth, it would be fine. It would probably, people would be upset, but they wouldn't be as upset. But the problem is with Warhammer. If they F up the story, they F up entire people's hobbies, livelihoods, so to speak. So it really hits close to home. The end times really hit close to home. The same with something like Star Wars. Whereas if you take, for example, Jurassic Park or something, Jurassic Park for most people it's just the movies. That's it. So if you fuck up the movie, it's not that much of an investment. It's what I'm trying to say. Whereas Warhammer, you have video games, you have comics, you have a whole book series. So a lot of things that require your time and work and effort to really put in to. So a lot of investment. They require a lot of investment. And if you just F that up and just take that away from people, yeah, no shit that most people are gonna be effing livid, okay? And that's that's what happened with the end time. So I definitely understand that. I understand why Games Workshop did what they did. It's still I don't think it excuses it, but I do understand. I mean, for them, Warhammer Fantasy was a failing license, so they tried to make the best of it. Sadly, when it comes to most corporations, they don't really care about potential. They usually only care about the money that something makes now, right at this moment. So I definitely understand why they did it. I still don't think it was the right thing, and they definitely got to feel that it wasn't the right thing. It was the wrong decision. And I definitely hope that in the future they do focus more on Warhammer Fantasy. Because could you imagine? I mean, I still understand why that doesn't exist, but could you imagine? I mean, a RPG in the Warhammer Fantasy universe, or a grand scale battlefield or a Call of Duty like shooter, even a battle royale, honestly, even a battle royale, so something. I mean, the possibilities are there. The Warhammer Fantasy universe is so rich and so full of lore. It's a huge world, and there's just so much potential to do something with it. But up until now, yeah, there has been this one game. I guess Total War was already a huge success. I mean, the Warhammer Total War series was one of the, if not the most successful Total War series to date. And so it just goes to show that the Warhammer Fantasy universe has huge potential that they still haven't tapped into. And I really hope they and I think they're doing it. Slowly but surely. The Warhammer 40k universe is in a similar position, but I think especially with Warhammer Fantasy, they could do much more. Right? Especially when it comes to video games, or maybe even TV shows. Though I'd say that it's pretty difficult to make a TV show when it comes to Warhammer 40k or Warhammer, just because of the budget and the CGI you would need to have, because it's very difficult to, create this universe with practical effects. I mean, I would even say it's almost impossible. But it would be possible, I think, in maybe some sort of cartoon style, mature cartoon. Well, of course, mature cartoon style. That would be really cool. You could really make something of that, and I think it would be pretty popular. So I really hope they do something with the license. As it stands now, maybe. I'll stick with maybe. So anyway, that's my take on the question. Again, if you have more questions, man, go for it. And thank you again, William. Really like those. Really love it. Yeah, I guess that's it then. See ya next time in MADMAN RAMBLE. And before I forget, remember to subscribe, or else I will eat you alive.